What is up, guys? Welcome back to another GeekaWhat video. In this one, I'm going to be building the ultimate $3,000 white-themed gaming PC. That's right, this system not only performs well, as we'll see in all the gaming benchmarks later on, but looks the part too, with an amazing case and more white-themed components than you can dream of. Let's do this. Let's kick things off a bit differently today by covering off all of the components first, then building the system, before finishing off with performance and benchmarks later. Now, let's start off, shall we, with the CPU and GPU combo. These are the two most important factors when it comes to choosing your components, as they broadly define the performance you can expect. The Intel Core i9-13900K is the best CPU you can buy right now. To put bluntly, it's better than the AMD Ryzen 9 7950X, much better than Intel's last 12th gen lineup, and doesn't actually cost a fortune when you consider the kind of performance you can achieve. If you'd like to find out how this is different to the i7 and the i5, apart from of course just having more cores and some better clock speeds, we've done a full rundown of that, which I'll put in the cards now. Of course, I need to pick a nice GPU to pair up with the i9. And for now at least, that is the RTX 4080. Now, I say for now, James, what do you mean for now? Well, there's a couple of interesting GPU releases coming from AMD in the next few weeks. That's their 7900 XT and their 7900 XTX. And of course, if you're spending this kind of cash on a GPU, you might also want to consider the 4090. The 4080 though is still very solid. DLSS 3 is awesome, it's a beast for 4K gaming, and it ticks a lot of boxes. The good news for consumers is that you just have more choice when it comes to GPUs than you've had any time in the last 3 or even 4 years. I particularly like the cooler of this graphics card as well, and it fits with a lighter colour scheme build. It also screams premium aesthetic with a large triple slot design, and MSI's genuinely gorgeous SUPRIM design language. This thing is a beast. Now, I'll be building the whole system inside of this, the Corsair iCUE 5000T. It's available in black, or in this instance, white. It's the first time I've used a white version of this case, so I'm pretty excited to see how it stacks up. I've heard great things, and we were impressed with the black design when we tested it out for a full review. Memory and RAM in this build is going to be provided by not one, but 2 kits of Corsair's Vengeance RGB. This is, of course, DDR5, as our build uses a DDR5 motherboard. There isn't a huge advantage to this memory over DDR4 right now, but if you're spending the kind of sums of money on an i9 build, it does make sense to spend that slight extra and pick it up. The whole system will be built on side of MSI's mid-range Z790 carbon board. I say mid-range, it's a high-end motherboard, but sort of mid-range within the Z790 lineup. Although this board is black in colour, it still looks great, and with all the white components on, it should all blend in very nicely. LJ1700 socket, PCI Generation 5 for GPU and SSD, and then if we spin around to the rear I/O, you'll notice Wi-Fi 6E, your normal audio ports, alongside a 2.5 gig Ethernet and loads of USB, including Type-C, 10 and 20 gigabit connections. MSI then did a pretty good job with their Z790 carbon, and you've guessed it, we've done a full review of this over on the website, where you can learn just a little bit more about the ins and outs of this design. But it's really solid. MSI always made a great motherboard. I particularly love MSI's BIOS. It's one of the most intuitive to use of any designs on the market. For the storage in this build, I've also picked up a new Corsair product. This is their MP600 GS. It basically takes their existing Gen 4 NVMe, deheat sinks it, and allows us to just save a bit of money and install it under the shielding on this board. I don't want to take off all of those nice heat spreaders as they fit with the aesthetic, so hiding this away under a pre-done cooling solution is a better shout for me. To wrap things up in the cooling department, I've also got a pack of Corsair's QOut RGB fans just to add that RGB aesthetic to the system. It's a large case with loads of room for airflow, and their Corsair iCUE H150i Elite CAPELLIX, a cooler that gives you basically every feature you could want apart from a screen. And that is where this comes in. Corsair recently released their fairly pricey Elite LCD cooler lineup, and when they did so, they dropped the bombshell that all of their coolers that they'd released in the last, I don't know, a year, 2-year period would be compatible with an upgrade kit. It's a really easy upgrade, and I'll show you how I'm going to do it later. RGB ring, you got this nice translucent, kind of like Game Boy-esque design from years ago. I'm excited to see how this performs, and of course, course it fits with the lighter colour scheme across the build today. Finally, to wrap the parts up, I've also picked up Corsair's RM 850X power supply with a white sleeved cable kit and plenty of cable combs to help us along a little bit later. But I've had enough of talking, let's get this thing built. CPU is always the first part you're going to want to install, so let's pop that in, line up all the triangles, drop it in. Be careful because you can easily bend the pins on the socket and add it into place. The RAM is next, and because I've got 4 DIMMs and 4 slots, it makes it really easy. I haven't got to go to the hassle of figuring out which damn slot I'm supposed to be using. 1, 2, 3, and finally, DIMM number 4. The SSD is next, and MSI have got a few tricks up their sleeve. That's right, this thing is actually toolless, so we can take off the cover, then try and peel back the plastic. That's going to slide in there nice and easily, and then this toolless thing, there we are, will just hold it into place. To complete the installation, the cover goes back on, you push the little stopper in on the end, take the peel off, and we're all good to go. I think the motherboard, minus another, an aggressive peel, is pretty much done. I might pop some cooler prep on there, just a backplate and a couple of posts to make installing the H150i Elite CAPELLIX LCD version that little bit easier. Next up is the case, and I always forget when building in a chassis like this how big and bloody cumbersome it is to get it out the box. But it'll be worth it in the end. That's what I keep telling myself anyway. I hope. Don't let me down, 5000T.
Don't let me down.
Smashed it. Not literally. Tell you something, there's a lot of foam. This thing is definitely not going to arrive smashed. That is for certain. Whoa, yep. It's all good.
All under control.
It's all, yes, exactly. It's all under control. Now, isn't that a good looking case? The only complaint I've got is that it could really be all white at the front. I don't see the need for these grey accents. Same with the grey PCI lanes at the rear. However, I'm not going to moan too much because so far, I'm pretty impressed. You can see as well, at the front here, you get 3 LL fans included as standard. This case has got like over 300 LEDs, I think, or something stupid, which will light up both the front, the sides, the top, and on the bottom to give us some underglow. It's just a gorgeous chassis, and you get these magnetically controllable doors, which you can open and swing. A little something like this. Now, you might notice, I can't take the door off, and that's because there is actually a screw in the top which basically protects the door accidentally falling if you pick the case up the wrong way around or something. That screwdriver's not big enough or something like that. Get a big screwdriver. There we are, much better. I'd also recommend that you do the same on the other side with the other side panel, as we'll need to access the back of the case. Oh yeah, baby. And we are looking good. I'm going to pop my chassis down on the table to make installing the motherboard a piece easier, which in theory should just slide into place pretty simply, lining up over all the default pre-installed standoffs. The one in the center is actually slightly raised, this one just here, which means there's no screw to put in it, but it will hold the motherboard into place while you go ahead and screw it down. And the last one goes in, a little something like that, and the motherboard is installed. Cooler's next. A few options for this. I could put it here by taking off this panel, but I think the top's going to look a bit empty if I do that. What I am going to do, though, is use the pre-installed fans on the cooler at the top to create the pull, and then I'm going to add in my QLs that I bought at the bottom for the push, giving us extra RGB at the top, but more importantly, a bit of extra airflow. This final spare QL edition fan is going to go at the back for some exhaust air to keep this thing, hopefully, nice and cool. The water block's the last thing to deal with. I am going to add the screen on, but first let's actually get the thing installed. Pre-applied thermal paste from Corsair makes my life a little bit easier here, and then these included thumb screws. Oh no, one of which I've just dropped. Oh, I've rescued it. That was okay. There's nothing worse than losing a thumb screw into the abyss of your motherboard's CPU area. No, I've done it again. Oh my goodness me. Third time lucky. Come on, third time lucky. Yes, that was a bit better. No. Oh. Yes, no. Oh, bloody, not why. 3/4. Oh my God. Aha. Magnetic screwdriver to the rescue. Best piece of PC building advice right there, guys. No. Oh, yeah. Get in the moment, James. Focus. Nope. Yes. Yep, that's the second one. Number 3, and then let's finish things off with the 4th one. Number 4. In we go. I then just need to tighten them up with the screwdriver to finish them off and stop them from going anywhere. Before opening up the CPU cooler LCD water block design, oh yes, to reveal one of the coolest looking things I've ever seen. Would you just look at that? This next bit is potentially a bit fiddly, but if you use the included Allen key to loosen these very tight screws, very, very tight indeed. Something which unfortunately doesn't appear to be working for a couple of mine, so I've got a manual screwdriver bit instead. That's definitely a bit of feedback call Corsair, that Allen key you've given is not strong enough, and nothing is going to be a proper screwdriver for actually removing all 4 of the necessary screws. So there we are. That's then going to give you this little top plate that's then, of course, taken off. Then you remove the piece that sits underneath. That's this thing right here. And then we've not only got the water block with a few holes on the bottom here, but also some screws. So I think you add in the screws to these threads just here. And what that's then going to do is create ones with a magnetic end that this can clip onto. It will go on as it is now, a-okay, like so. And it feels like it's not really going to go anywhere, but adding in those extra screws for some greater magnetism probably isn't a bad idea. Little magnetism test. Is this going to be better? Oh, yeah, that is miles better. That thing is hardly going to move now. I just need to unravel all of these included cables. He says, while trying to unravel them, and run these around the back of the system. But otherwise, though, that's all good. And these cables will now take over control, not only of the LCD, but of the pump as well, which is a really, really sleek, fantastic solution to this problem from Corsair. All looking very good. The GPU is next then, MSI's SUPRIM X 4080. Now, the 4080 has had a bit of a lukewarm reception, and the main reason for that is because it's very expensive but performs worse than the 4090, which only costs another couple $100. Now obviously a few $100 is a lot of money in terms of an upgrade, but with this already being $1,200 at MSRP plus whatever MSI, GeekaWhat and Asus will charge for their beefed up, more powerful cooling designs, and suddenly this thing is an interesting proposition. I'm expecting prices on this to drop. I do not think Nvidia will hold out at $1,200 for the next year or two on a card like this one, but that's my opinion. Could very well be wrong. I've been wrong in the past. Now, installing the GPU is pretty easy. This one's got 3 slots, meaning we need to actually remove 3 of the PCI lanes. So you can see here, we've got numero uno, numero dos, and numero tres. My Spanish fans are going to be, well, probably hating. I was going to say loving, probably hating me at this moment in time. And then it's a simple case of pushing back the clip on the PCIe slot, sliding the GPU in. Oh, yes. Oh, no. It's not those PCIe slots. It's actually the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. MSI. Very, very interesting. They've moved the PCIe slot down by 1 to allow, I think, for more M.2 SSD space, which is a little bit weird, but we can add the one back into slot 2 for now. And try again, second time lucky, to actually slide the graphics card into place. Oh yes, boys, looking very good. It does look a little bit weird given how low down it is. I had no idea MSI had done this, but I suppose we've still got plenty of airflow room, so nothing too dramatic. And then with the top panels to close the whole system up, there's only one last thing to actually install into the case, and that's the power supply to get everything juiced up and ready to go. But so far, looking pretty good. With the system looking fantastic, it's time to make sure that the performance is equally as impressive. In Warzone 2.0 at 4K, we tested with DLSS set to quality mode and a high visual fidelity overall. We pulled in 122 frames per second on average, with the game looking fantastic, and we're really impressed with how this system stacked up in the new Warzone 2.0. In Call of Duty's Modern Warfare 2, the second new COD title in the last 2 weeks or so, the performance numbers were also very good. 4K high with DLSS set to quality, achieved 130 frames per second. You'll notice that's within around about 5% of Warzone 2.0, giving us very similar performance across both of the new COD titles. Fortnite was next up, and at 1080p competitive settings, an impressive 315 frames per second was possible, with the game providing uber consistent frame rates that looked fantastic, with actually a pretty nice visual fidelity at 1080p competitive. Apex Legends carried on the pattern of good results as well. 4K high settings in this title delivered 164 frames per second, with the game looking, as you'd expect, absolutely awesome. Moved through into Overwatch 2, and at true 4K ultra settings, over 200 frames per second was clocked in, 213 FPS on average, while in Cyberpunk 2077, with the new DLSS 3 update, at 4K high with ray tracing set to ultra, this system pulled in 97 frames per second on average. Finally, to wrap things up, I also tested out Formula 1 2022, 4K, the ultra high preset, ray tracing set to high, and DLSS 3. Basically, anything you can turn on, I have turned on. 158 FPS was the overall average. This is a system that performed really well in all the latest titles at 4K and comes with plenty of power to play the latest AAA titles and next-gen games too. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to get subscribed to see more from us. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.